The following is a Hoop Ball presentation. Welcome to the Fantasy NBA Today podcast.
I was thinking about doing a bad iteration of a Christmas jingle here, but screw it. I'm just going back to old reliable. Happy Brandon Day.
Happy Brandon Day.
What's up, man? How are you?
I'm doing all right. Doing good. Middle of the week. Hoping we can get to the end of the week sooner rather than later. But things are good. No complaints. I'm ready to talk some injuries.
You're counting down the hours to the end of the week there, huh? Everything you sure everything's okay?
Yeah, things are doing all right. Just it's the work week. You're always getting ready for the end of the week.
That's right. Yeah, you and what is the? Oh man, why I'm gonna mess up this reference. What is it? Oh, something. Monkey works for the week. Oh, I gotta look it up before we're done with our segment. I'll figure it out while we're talking about something. He is Brandon Marcus. I am Dan Besbris. This is Fantasy NBA Today. It's Brandon Day. It's Wednesday. It's Ailment Day if you got one. Smoke if you got him. Fantasy NBA Today is a hoop ball and Hawaiian Isles Kona Coffee presentation. HawaiianIsles.com is the website. HI Kona Coffee on Twitter, or just search Hawaiian Isles on Amazon.com. You can follow the two of us on Twitter at BDMarcus. B as in boy, D as in dog, Marcus. That's Brandon. He's on Twitter. I am at Dan Besbris on Twitter. Just spell my name, you got me. Or search for Dan from Hoopball. You can follow us that way as well. Normally, Brandon, you and I talk about buy low, sell high type of stuff. But we were texting and we thought it might be kind of fun to switch things up for a week because we've been getting a lot of questions about what to do with guys like John Collins, DeAndre Ayton, certainly more of these questions earlier than later. Kyrie Irving has been a huge topic in the Twitter sphere, on forums, whatever. Thomas Bryant's injury. There are long-term injuries, and those are dealt with sort of a little bit differently. So I thought it might be kind of fun, and you agreed as well, to discuss how to deal with injuries, long-term ones, how to potentially either buy or sell guys that are injured. And so it's a little bit of a twist on buy low, sell high. It's buy low, sell injured, or buy injured, sell high. I don't know. Buy injured, sell injured is the official new name of this thing.
Buy hurt and then heal and hope that they come back quickly.
That's right. Buy hurt, heal fast. Yeah. Don't sell. That's the very bad name for this new segment we're doing. Okay. Where do you want to start? I'll ping the ball into your court here because we've got the list of names already. You're not surprising me with anything today. Right. Where do we begin? Ayton, because he's back the soonest?
No, I was actually going to say Kyrie because it seemed like that's the question we're getting the most because Ayton's coming back next week. So that's kind of not as impossible to figure out as the Kyrie situation because Ayton, you're holding for 1 week and he's back. Hooray.
Yeah, good call.
But the Kyrie one, I'm getting a lot of questions. Got one a couple of nights ago trying to figure out what you would take in return for Kyrie because this person had their team floundering. They didn't know what to do. They can't keep taking the L's. So they need to get healthy bodies. And so they're wondering what they could get in return. And it's really a tough situation because the last we heard, Kyrie's going to come back to practice in 1 to 2 weeks. But the one thing we're noticing this year as opposed to previous years is we no longer have a timetable. We're getting will be reevaluated in X amount of weeks, which means
the worst.
Which means absolutely nothing to us because we don't know what to do. So in this situation with Kyrie, I think it's one that's worth talking about to see what you would take in return for him if your team was struggling and whether you would buy him. Personally, I'm not buying him because this concerns me. Kyrie's getting hurt all the time. The one thing you can do if you have balls is you can trade for him and then trade him again once he gets healthy. That's my take. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm often accused on draft night of having a distinct lack of balls, and I'm okay with that. I feel like it often sets my teams up to just sort of coast along at a pretty good clip. I do have, I think, some stones when it comes to stuff like this. For me, this is easier to visualize because it's almost always guys we're talking about that are proven commodities where the only issue is how many games they're playing. And you and I are going to diverge, I think, on some of these discussions because you're more of a head-to-head guy and I'm more of a roto guy. And hopefully that's actually helpful for the people listening in, depending on More of them probably actually are going to side with you on this. I think more folks play head-to-head than Roto. On the Kyrie Irving front, it is incredibly nebulous. You're absolutely right on that side. But prior to getting hurt in the 11 games he played, he was number 5 in 9-cat. I mean, he was outstanding. 29 points a game, 5 boards, 7 assists, a steal, half a block, 3 3-pointers, high volume, 94% at the free throw line. That number was going to come down a little bit. High volume, 44% from the field. That number was actually probably going to come up a tiny bit. So there was, in my estimation, no reason to think that he would fall outside of the top 10. The question is now, of the remaining whatever games the Nets actually have left, I didn't count this up before we went on air. I assume it's somewhere in the 50s. That's where we're sitting at this point, right? Like high 50s, mid to high 50s games left.
Yeah, most teams have about 22, 23 they've played, so about 50.
Okay, so actually
or
closer to
60, sorry, 60.
Geez, okay, so high 50s up to near 60. How many of those is he actually going to play? I mean, for me, even if you're looking at 45 of those, I'm still good with a buy. The question now becomes at what cost? I feel like you could get him pretty cheap. And when I say pretty cheap, it's a comparative analysis here. It's not like throw out a top 95 guy. I'm just saying for someone that was ranked top 5, like he's ahead of Luka Doncic in 9-cat rankings. You could get him for something way less than a first rounder right now. How can I pass up an opportunity like that? Like, what if, do you think let's pretend you have Kyrie, since you actually don't like him very much. So this will be, you're a person who is extremely frustrated with his non-timetable and injury history. If I offered you Chris Paul, would you take it?
Yes. Actually, no, not Chris Paul, because he's going to get hurt at some point.
Okay, similar stat set, just not as injury prone. What if I offered you LaMarcus Aldridge?
No, because of fear that he's going to rest down the stretch because of Spurs stink. But
All right.
but you're close.
I'm getting close. Clint Capella?
Yes.
Okay. These guys are in the Aldridge is 29. By the way, people are giving me heat for my Aldridge love. He's 29 again, guys.
By the way, I would take, I may be in the minority in this. I would take Bam
over Kyrie.
Yeah, just because I think that Bam's going to continue to get usage. They're building around him. I think he has the ability to continue to get better. The free throw percentage hopefully would go up. I also love Bam, but I mean, Jokic, who's at 38, I would take.
Yeah, I would too. That one I'm on board. I'd rather have Jokic.
I think I would take Tobias.
Wow. You're giving me a lot of ideas here. You're listening.
I also hate Kyrie, but here's the issue. Here's the one issue, Dan. If you decide to trade for him, and this is completely different between head-to-head and Roto, because you're right, because you do the Roto and the games cap, and you can afford to have guys miss games. That does not hurt you as much as it does in a head-to-head, where you could be losing the next 2 or 3 matchups because Kyrie's not there. And it does worry me that once he gets back, that maybe they aren't doing as well, he gets re-injured, maybe they're not in the playoff hunt at the end of the year, and he sits and gets ready for the KD era next year. So there's all that stuff that's floating around, and in head-to-head in fantasy playoffs, if you don't have Kyrie Irving, then that really hurts you. So I want to have something that's going to be there at the end of the year, and that's where we differ, is that at this point, Kyrie is sinking teams. But at the same time, you've held on to him for this long, and now that we have the 1 to 2 weeks, it's a little bit harder to get rid of him than it would have been 1 to 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, and I think that's why I'm buying is, and on top of everything else, by the way, the Nets are almost guaranteed a playoff spot in the Eastern Conference because the bottom 7 teams in the East are atrocious. Like, they would have to totally melt down.
Well, they were bad with Kyrie, by the way. I think their record with Kyrie versus without Kyrie is very, very different.
Yeah, they're like a game or two under 500, and then they're like 9-3 without him. They did have a really easy stretch. They played better lately. I'll give them credit on that front. They played a bunch of really terrible teams right when Kyrie got hurt. But also the East is awful. I mean, even if he comes back and disrupts the chemistry, look at the bottom 6 teams in the East and tell me any of those teams is actually going to compete for a playoff spot. The Hornets, the Bulls, the Wizards, the Hawks, the Cavs, the Knicks. The only team the Nets have to worry about is the Pistons, and they kind of stink too. So
yeah.
I think that, they're going to be at the very least in the hunt, and maybe that's a good thing for Kyrie playing down the stretch. There's my argument for head-to-head. If I'm not, by the way, I'm actually with you. I don't think I'm trading for him in a head-to-head league. There's too much risk attached to it, and you have to take some L's waiting for him to come back. But in Roto, pretty much every name that I lobbed out there just a minute ago, I would give up for Kyrie Irving. So, by the way, if you're in Roto leagues with me and you've got Kyrie, feel free to throw my direction, because Brandon picked a bunch of guys that are on all of my teams, like all of my Tobias Harrises are floating around out there. I don't think most people would take Tobias for Kyrie. I think your hatred might actually be one click above the average.
Yeah, that's fair. The one offer that we got, by the way, that we were hit up on Twitter is that this guy was giving up Kyrie and getting Bledsoe in-house. And that's really, really low.
Yeah, I don't want that.
I mean, that's 85 and 100 probably that you're giving up or getting for a guy that, like you said, is top 5. I mean, that's not enough return, I don't think. I want to get guys that are going to be producing at least the level of Tobias Harris.
Yeah, so the guys around Tobias, I'm going to go a little higher as opposed to a little lower. Donovan Mitchell is one I bet would get you Kyrie right now because there's so much name power there. But he's 42 in 9-cat, folks. People were yelling at me when he got off to that top 20 start. He's petered out. You know, the same stuff that's cropped up for him in the past is back up there again. The field goal percent dropping, whatever. This is not a Donovan Mitchell should be drafted in the 40s.
Jrue Holiday is another one.
Yeah, I think I'd probably give up Jrue because there's some shutdown risk associated with him that you're dealing with as well. Jason Tatum, Malcolm Brogdon would have been a great one before he started falling off a cliff here lately. I don't know how much higher than those guys I would go, though. Like I mentioned Chris Paul because there is the injury risk. As you get up into that territory, you're looking at guys like Vooch, Devin Booker, Siakam, Kyle Lowry, but there's an injury guy. I would give him up for Kyrie. Kemba Walker, Jonathan Isaac. Would you give up Jonathan Isaac for Kyrie Irving?
No, I'd rather have Isaac.
Yeah, he is playing right now. I think I probably would, actually. It depends on my team makeup, but I think I probably would. Brandon Ingram, sell high for Kyrie?
Yeah, you could do that. I think I'd rather have Kyrie in that situation.
Yeah, most of these guys, I'm picking Kyrie over them. Very few of those names I mentioned I wouldn't.
Rashawn Holmes is 22.
Can you believe that? Oh, my God. Can we do a Rashawn Holmes celebratory segment on today's show?
My goodness, man. That's absolutely incredible. I added him the second that he was going to start, and boy, he has been unbelievable.
So good. In totals, by the way, because he played in games before he got promoted. He just wasn't that great in those games. By totals, he's number 9 in 9-cat.
Jesus.
Yeah. Top 10 in totals at this point.
Yeah. Is this, by the way, like a Roto style? The rankings that on Basketball Monster, is it all Roto style? Is that how they rank it?
I think it's, well, you can sort by per game or totals. So you can sort of flip it around a little bit depending on what you like. Per game
would be Roto and totals would be head to head.
Probably.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Number 9, man. If that, by the way, is the reason that I'm hyper competitive in the 30-team league you and I were laughing about on the premium show on Monday. Okay, so that's the Kyrie story. What about the other side? I mean, it sounds like you would sell him for a lot of stuff just to get out from underneath it. I mean, I guess we covered both ends of it, didn't we? I guess yeah.
But it's worth noting that here's the issue. If you're going to hold on to him and you think you can deal him once he comes back, I find it hard to trade in general with people because I feel like they just overvalue their guys, and then they kind of know the people in my league go, oh, you're trying to buy low on this guy. You're trying to sell high on this guy. Like, some people are not stupid. So when Kyrie comes back and does well for a week or two, it's very possible they're going to be like, oh, okay, well, he was just hurt for a while. Why would I take him? So that's the only risk that you do take on if you decide to acquire him and then trade him, or if you decide to wait and then trade him, is that it's very possible other people in your league know that he was hurt and don't want him.
Yeah, you have to be more clever than that, which is why, by the way, I mean, this is not related to our discussion right now, but it's why I've been pointing out that the Warriors have this stretch of non-back-to-backs where a lot of people in your league might not notice it. So this is where you can let guys settle in a little bit quietly and then maybe make a trade to get out from under those guys. Similar thing with Kyrie. You're not going to be able to unload him after 2 games when he comes back. He's going to need to play probably 10 before you can convince somebody, okay, he's good to go. You can be like, look, he's played his last 10 games in a row. He's fine. You know, the shoulder thing is behind him. So your choice is either sell now or sell like 15 to 16 games from now. So it's a pretty big gap there between, and the same deal on the buying side. You're either buying now or you're waiting until his cost goes way up. This is your moment when there is this cloud around when he's actually going to come back, and it might be a week, it might be 2, it might be 3. You have to take the plunge if you want the risk. You can't buy him at a cheap price after there is a timetable, because then his price is going to go up. That's it.
Yeah.
It's a leverage thing. As soon as somebody knows how long they have to wait, they're going to be able to put a stamp on him. Okay, I have to wait 3 weeks. All right, fine. This is exactly what the cost is going to be. Right now, the question marks make him as cheap as he will ever be. Simple enough.
No. Yeah, no. That's the issue, is if you're going to try and trade for somebody that's hurt, or if we're going to try and trade somebody that's hurt, you got to know that if you're going to trade for somebody, you're going to end up giving up less than you would if you wait, and the other way around. You will end up giving up more if you do wait.
People drive me nuts with the trade stuff, because it's just like,
yeah,
I'm gonna buy him. I'm gonna buy low after the news is already out that he's gonna be back in 3 games or something like that. You have to beat the news. You have to beat the news. What about the 2 suspended guys? Because one is 1 week away, the other is basically 2.5 weeks away. Is it too late to buy on DeAndre Ayton? Probably, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I have him on a team, and I'm like, I've held on to him for this long. I went and, God, this was a while ago. I'm going to kill myself. So I added Ayton and you only get 4 center spots on ESPN, which is so stupid, by the way.
So dumb.
And Holmes was a free agent. And I'm like, all right, well, I have Ayton, I have Towns, I have Brooke Lopez, and I have Miles Turner. I'm like, who am I going to drop? I'm like, I can't drop anybody. So I ended up not getting Holmes. So it's like people that have been waiting this long on Ayton want to see him play. And how glorious is it that at some point when he plays, I do have Ayton, so I want him to do well, but finally he's going to be removed from that number 1 slot, because frankly, he's not the number 1 player in fantasy.
Yeah, that has been incredibly annoying. DeAndre Ayton, number 1, 18-11, a steal and 4 blocks on 64% shooting, and no turnovers. He's brilliant. He can't be stopped.
So bad. But yes, I think if you're going to give up if you're going to try and trade for Ayton, I think you may have a tiny buy low, because some people may not realize how high he was drafted. But here's my only hesitation. I'm curious to see if you agree. This Baines thing kind of does worry me, because Baines was doing really well when Ayton was out, and we don't know how many minutes Ayton's going to play, because they were competitive. They were winning games with Baines. So there kind of is a question mark. They obviously want to play Ayton. He was great when he played last year, but there is somebody else there now to try and chew at a couple of his minutes.
I think you probably see Ayton around 30 instead of 33. People were probably hoping for like 32, 33. It probably comes down by 2 or 3 minutes, and you probably see Baines in the 18 to 20 range, if I had to guess, which should still be enough. It probably just puts Ayton around his minute total from last year, which was 30.5, effectively.
Would you want him? Would you try trading for him?
I would, but I think even just from hearing you talk about how long you've been hanging on to him, I don't think you can get him at the right price right now. I think you basically have to pay what he was drafted at, because he's now a week away. He's so close. I don't think there is a ton of fear there. I don't think there's a ton of fear with John Collins either. So let's lump these 2 guys actually into one discussion. It's probably too late to buy on either of them, but when the news came out that they were going to miss a month and a half of basketball each, that's the moment to buy, right?
Yeah, especially in your leagues, man, where you have this games cap and you have the ability to have a guy sit on your bench for a month or so. I mean, in my league, granted this guy was in last place, and so he just couldn't afford it, and his team sucks every year, but he dropped Ayton and he dropped Collins. He had both guys, and now they're on different teams. And with Collins, it's like that was absolutely the time. Like, you know how good he is. If you were in first place, you could go ahead and sit and wait for it. It really does work with this entire conversation, Dan, is that if you are high in the standings, you can afford to sit on a guy like Vucevic.
So important to get off to a quick start.
A guy like De'Aaron Fox. You could go ahead and sit on these players, as opposed to if you're sitting in 7th or 8th and you have 3 slots that are dedicated to Ayton, Collins, and Fox, you're going to be in trouble, and you're going to need to trade one of them, and people know that, and you're not going to get as good of a value. So it's tough. It's really a difficult situation. But like you said, and this is why we harped on it the entire offseason, draft a healthy team. No one could have seen this Collins stuff coming. No one could have seen this Ayton stuff coming. And the suspensions for drugs, you just don't know is going to happen. But that's why it's so imperative to not start with guys that are going to get hurt. Guys like Kyrie Irving, for example, they get hurt every single year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because people are like, how? I could have never seen the suspensions coming. You're right. So make sure those are the only things you're dealing with at all costs. That's a great point. Put that one in the good points column. I want to make sure that we again stress the fact that you don't wait until halfway through someone's suspension or injury is up to throw out your buy low offers. You have to get in there early. That's when the price is low because there's a weight attached to it. You have to. I'm sorry. That's just how it works. Too many people think that they can wait until a suspension or injury is 2 to 3 weeks from done and then start lobbing out offers. You have to put yourself in the owner's shoes in that spot. If I had one of these guys and I just sat on him for 5 weeks and then someone lowballed me, not only would I reject that trade, I would also include a message telling them to where they can stick it. You know, like put yourself in the other person's shoes when you're making these trade offers. Try to understand what someone psychologically from fantasy is. It's funny that it's like a real thing. What they're going through in their head, which is like when Nick Vucevic went down and it looked horrible. That's your moment. As soon as you found out it wasn't, like an ACL tear out for the year kind of thing, that's your moment. With Collins and Ayton, it was an obvious one. We knew exactly the day they'd be coming back. That's a perfect opportunity to buy low. I want to talk about one other guy that falls into the what the hell category, Thomas Bryant. We got to do it because it's a little bit Kyrie-esque in that we don't really know when he's coming back. They've said evaluated in 3 weeks. He's not like Kyrie, he's not a top 5 guy. So it's not like you can say, well, if he comes back and we can even squeeze 40 games out of him, it's worth it. He was in the 60s when he went down. We don't know when he's coming back. He's a guy that teams are probably going to consider dropping. Now, that being said, see, there you go. This is also the time to buy if you want to do so. Yes. If you want to do so. What would it take to get Thomas Bryant off a team? I feel like you could get him for anyone inside the top 100.
Yes, correct. And I dropped him because here's the thing that I'm learning, and I learned it very quickly this year, and it happened with the De'Aaron Fox thing, this reevaluated thing. Every single time you see that does not mean they're coming back in 3 weeks. It means they're getting reevaluated, and that's why I've been telling people on Twitter that have been asking me, drop Otto Porter. Just drop him. We have no idea what his injury is, like how bad it is. They continue to push back the timetable. Drop him because we have no idea when he's coming back. It's really not worth it to kill your roster with a guy that, frankly, has no return date. And in De'Aaron Fox's case, immediately when he got hurt, people said, this is a 2 to 3 month injury. Yeah. And they said, all right, he's going to be reevaluated in 4 weeks. And I said, all right, that's cool, except that I read news that this is probably a 2 to 3 month injury. And so I'm probably screwed. So I tried trading him. No one would bite. And so I'm just sitting on him now and just waiting for him to come back and hoping that he comes back sooner rather than later. But you're right. I mean, in this case, you just need to realize that some of these injuries are worse than people think. A stress fracture in the foot is not a good injury. That's not a 3-week injury. Thomas Bryant's not coming back that soon. I think it's going to be like a 2-month injury. And in that case, if a guy is sitting around 65 or 70, as much as I love Thomas Bryant, and he was one of my guys during the offseason I wanted to acquire, I'm not going to sit on a guy that's probably going to end up losing minutes to Wagner and Bertans and all that kind of stuff when he comes back, because he wasn't performing great before he went down. And in that case, I'm okay dropping him.
You know what's funny? It's related, but also unrelated. As you were talking about Thomas Bryant, and as we've been talking about all these guys, I realized that I've been doing fantasy for, I think it's about 18 years now. I don't think I've ever sold an injured player on my team.
Really?
I think zero. I think I've never done it. I've always just said, bleep it, and swallowed that jagged little pill. Shout out Alanis Morissette. I can't in my mind reconcile giving away a guy at a discount. It's the weirdest damn thing.
Well, it's fair. That's totally fair. I mean, in the league that I was in, I'm talking about with Fox, I mean, I was sitting with 4 or 5 guys hurt, and I said, F it, I'll just take a couple losses. I'll figure it out. There's 14 weeks left when I get Ayton back. I'll be fine. Like, I'm confident enough in what I can do fantasy-wise that if I can sit around that 6 or 7 spot when 6 teams make playoffs, I'll be fine. Just make playoffs and I'll go for broke then.
Do you ever make up, and it sounds like you do a little bit, number one, you look to see how many weeks are left when your guys are expected to return. That's a really good idea.
Yeah, that's what I did with Ayton.
Number two, do you ever set a low threshold for how far your team can fall out of a playoff spot before you're like, okay, I gotta hit the panic button here? Or is it just...
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I was following the standings, and that's what I was doing. I mean, 4 weeks ago, I was like, all right, well, I started off well. So there you go. That's your start off well thing. And then the injury struck and I kept losing. And I said, all right, fine. And then I looked at my matchup. Like, I have 3 matchups coming up. I need to win one of the next 3. And I won one of the next 3. And so I'm just like, all right, fine. I have a bye week because it's an 11-team league in week 9. Turns out that's the week 8 and comes back. I'm like, great. After that week, we'll figure it out.
All right. Beautiful. Hope that helped everybody. This is the potentially buy low, stay healthy, don't sell, maybe do sell, poorly named segment with Brandon Marcus and Dan Vespers.
Yeah, that was bad.
Yeah,
that was really bad.
Yeah, we'll come up with a
better.
better
Not
name.
impressed.
Okay. Hey, you got any ailments before I let you go?
My neck is hurting a little bit, but apart from that, a little bit fuzziness in the eye, but status quo.
Oh, the weirdness reigns supreme here on Fantasy NBA today. All right, that's it. That's it for Brandon. We'll go back to normal buy low, sell high next week. If you got follow-up questions, obviously, on this injury stuff, hit Brandon up on Twitter at BDMarcus. I am at Dan Vespers. Obviously, I'll be discussing the box scores here momentarily, getting everybody situated on that front. But Brandon, I will talk to you on the premium show on Monday.
Talk to you then. And happy Brandon Day.
And that was, of course, as always, the wonderful Brandon Marcus. We took a little bit of a detour this week, but I'm glad we did. It was something that I thought was worth exploring, especially in this moment, and maybe we'll reassess it. Well, maybe we'll add that into our weekly discussion. We'll do the buy lows, we'll sell highs. We'll try to touch on some injury stuff and kind of how people can exploit it. If you can exploit it at all, sometimes you can't because there are extenuating circumstances. Like if Jaren Jackson Jr. got hurt early this year, or if Shea got hurt early this year, there are guys where I don't think you'd be able to buy low on them because of namesake, because of buzz. But there are, this is a perfect example. The suspensions, when they first came down, if you looked at it and you were like, okay, let me do my math here, you could probably have mathed your way to a buy. Say, okay, well, they're going to miss 25 games, 25 out of 82. It's a little bit less than a third of the season. What is a guy? Then you say, what's their rank going to be on a per-game basis? Let's say DeAndre Ayton and John Collins were somewhere in that 25 range. Best case scenario at that point, then they're playing 57 games, ranked 25th. You can find that comparison from seasons past, and you can say, okay, well, best case scenario for this guy now is, somewhere inside the top 50 for the season. That's just sort of a best case. And then you go and you try to match that up with someone you think is going to have top 50 total value, or maybe you go find somebody who's sitting in that top 50 range who isn't going to play a ton of games. So there's a lot of ways to look at this, and I think we should continue to look at it from the buy low, sell high perspective going forward. Let's break down the Tuesday card pretty quickly. I was actually really excited about this Tuesday card, and then aside from the overtime score fest in Miami, it turned out to be a little bit of a disinteresting night. For Washington, Davis Bertans continues to roll. He had 8 3-pointers. Rui Hachimura, with his increased usage, still looking good right now. It looks like he's turning out to be a much larger beneficiary of the Thomas Bryant injury than I initially thought, but it's definitely there. Mo Wagner got his 26 minutes. It wasn't a brilliant night, but by all accounts, it was a pretty good 9-category evening. He was basically one made 3-pointer away from what you'd call a really solid, quiet 9-cat game. Like, let's say he makes the 3-pointer, then you're talking about 12 points, a 3, 6 board, 3 assists, a block, and all 3 3-pointers made. As it stands, he was fairly middle of the pack, but I like the 26 minutes. I like that he salvaged his line that didn't get off to a quick start. I'm still good with everything that we had rolling in Washington. Troy Brown has actually played relatively well over the last couple of games as well, but it's sort of just a little bit on the outside kind of deal, more of a deep league sort. Charlotte Hornets, they're the same old story. Bismack Biyombo, Cody Zeller now are splitting the center minutes. They each doubled in this game in kind of an odd twist, but neither one of them is playing enough to get themselves onto a roster. PJ Washington settled back into some of his bad habits that had cost him kind of a hot run, but you got to love the 40 minutes, though. So what I'm going to say here is my thoughts on dropping him. Remember a couple shows back, I think that was either the beginning of this week or the end of last, I was saying that he was really close. I was thinking this might be the time to move on, and then promptly he had a big ball game, and I said, all right, I'm going to buy him a little bit more time. I like the fact that Nick Batum got hurt, not for his own sake, but just to sort of clear out a little bit of the riffraff with this one. Marvin Williams was also out, so that meant more time for PJ Washington as well. That appears to be the biggest threat to his numbers. So you hang on here, even with the bad percentages and the high turnovers. You hang on because the minutes are there, and if somebody's playing 40 minutes, it's going to be enough somehow. Same can be said for Miles Bridges, who played 38 minutes in this game. It wasn't a great one. He missed a bunch of shots, missed a free throw, but he had 2 blocks, he had 3 threes. That's fine. That's enough. We never were able to give the drop recommendation because there's still enough there. He's just not going to get as high as we, or I shouldn't say we, because I have no Miles Bridges, but as folks were hoping when they drafted him. Terry Rozier's been playing pretty well lately. Devontae Graham has been an incredible pickup, so we'll just sort of settle on that. Denver had some news in a game that was relatively low on news. Ben Simmons, bad percentage game. Josh Richardson coming back from his hamstring was not good at all and lost playing time to Matisse Thybulle, but as Richardson gets healthy, he'll settle back in. Shouldn't probably have started him. I did because I thought they wouldn't roll him out there until he was fully healthy because, they're good and the East is terrible. But this appeared to be a ramp-up game. Tobias Harris continues to play well, but no real news on the Philadelphia side. For Denver, Jamal Murray hurt his trunk. They're listing it as a trunk contusion. He landed awkwardly early in the ball game. Don't know what the timeline is on this yet at the time of recording, but Monty Morris is a guy I'm eyeballing as a potential streamer. He's probably getting picked up in a few spots even before you get a chance to listen to this podcast. I'm not dropping anybody significant. Jamal Murray is a pretty quick healer by all accounts, so I don't know that you can, sort of game for that to be a big difference maker. But if we get a word that he's going to miss 2, 3, 4 games, something like that, you could roll Monte out there with his high efficiency stuff and just enjoy it for a few games. But that's a streamer at best. Denver, of course, losing again in this ball game. They've hit a little bit of a rough patch. Gary Harris was actually decent in his 33 minutes. Maybe that was because Jamal Murray was down. Perhaps it's Gary Harris, actually, that gets the biggest bump here, kind of moving back over the cut line. Paul Millsap was a little better in this one after a slow spell. Nikola Jokic, 15, 7, and 11. He's still a buy low, even if he's not going to get as high as people wanted, myself included. And then Will Barton was hot, and he was the only reason they were able to hang out at all in this basketball game. Atlanta-Miami. You might not know it by the final score, but this was actually a really close ball game in regulation. This was the very rare ball game where teams get to pull their starters in overtime. You almost never see that, but they got creamed so hard in the bonus period that they were able to yank their regulars. DeAndre Hunter had a really nice ball game. He played 40 minutes, had 28 points, missed some free throws. He has severe percentages issues. I am far from considering DeAndre Hunter for a spot on my fantasy team. I am far from considering DeAndre Hunter for a spot on my fantasy team. He is number 231. One 28-point game is not going to change that complexion all that much. The names that we were thinking about, certainly in that Atlanta game, mainly Jabari Parker, he's been fine, but Kevin Huerter. Minutes still at 26, so they didn't move the minutes cap much, and there was certainly an opportunity to here in a game that went to overtime. So that's fine. I mean, whatever the schedule turns out to be with his stuff. He has minutes that he can take from guys like Cam Reddish, from Vince Carter. We already saw Damian Jones trending down. Alex Len played 22 minutes. He's been, okay, streaming-wise lately, but John Collins is going to mess that all up. I talked at great length on a previous pod about how I don't think John Collins is going to kill Jabari Parker completely, partially perhaps. But the reason I want to spend a little more time on Huerter is the 7 assists. He seems to have, and I don't know if this is going to be a thing forever, slipped into the backup ball handling role. Basically, anytime Trae Young is not on the floor, and for this game it was only 12 minutes, he played 41 of them, of the 53 in the ball game. But those 12 minutes are an opportunity for Huerter to get a few assists, and he's gonna tumble into a few when he's out there alongside Young anyway, because Trae's taking shots and other guys are taking shots. But in those 12 minutes, if he can pick up 2 or 3 assists, let's just say 2, that takes him from 2.5 to 4.5, and that's a big, big deal for a wing player, shooting guard, small forward type, and a reason to like him that perhaps didn't exist prior to last week. So my numbers for Huerter go up a little bit from a guy that I wasn't interested in at all to a guy that I'm looking at and thinking, well, if he pulls some weird, more initiator-like stats out of this, that's a very different game than he was set to bring to the table. Remember, in 30 minutes a game earlier this year, when he was just finally getting healthy, you were looking at 2-3 assists a game. In the 3 to 5 window is a very different window than the 1 to 4 window of assists, where you settle into that 2.5 range versus settling into 3.5 or 4. So that's a big deal to me. He made 3 3-pointers. He went 0 for 4 shooting in the second half, where this actually could have been a much more interesting game for him. But worth a stash right now, at the very least. There's sort of top 90 potential in him. I don't know that he gets much higher as the third or fourth offensive option, but the passing gets him a couple of clicks higher, and to me, that's enough where you can at least kind of lob your hat into the ring. The Heat, on the other hand, were not afraid to play their guys big minutes. Interesting note on this one, Derek Jones Jr. played 35 minutes, Kelly Olynyk only 17. Of course, that's not something that we figure is going to hold on a night-to-night basis. Atlanta was relatively small outside of the Alex Len minutes, so that obviously contributed to which guys were on the floor, besides Bam Adebayo, who, by the way, triple-doubled. Wow, big ball game. Jimmy Butler also triple-doubled. 2 giant ones on the Miami side. And we haven't even gotten to the big lines yet. But I think what this does is it seals the fate on a couple of guys. Number one, you're talking about how it seemed like Tyler Herro could probably hold value while both Goran Dragic and Justice Winslow were out. That's not entirely the case. He was always the third guy in my pecking order, even the fourth potentially of those groupings. Kendrick Nunn was always the guy that I said, we could probably hang on to value if 3 of the 4 guys are healthy. If all 4 guys are healthy, this is Nunn, Herro, Winslow, and Dragic. I don't think any of them have fantasy value. With 2 of them out, Nunn has an easy first crack at it. He actually led the team in field goal attempts with 26 in this game. And that's the beauty of it for him. He's been healthy enough where he's been able to sort of plod his way to fantasy value. He was at number 132 per game coming into this one, 106 totals. That'll push back into the under 100 category in totals, and probably more like 115, 120 on a per game basis. And so this is a window for him to stream Nunn. But again, if everybody gets healthy for the Heat, I think you probably drop all of them, including Kelly Olynyk. The one guy on the Heat that actually seems like he's moved in front of the cut line probably permanently now is Duncan Robinson, who really had his second. Everybody's like, wow, 10 3-pointers. Yeah, 10 3-pointers is great. Remember, he had 9 on November 20th. It's only 21 days ago. He had 9 3-pointers. He had a 5 and a 6 blended in there. He's hitting a truckload of them now. Over the last month, he's up to almost 3.5 3-pointers a game. I think he's actually above that. He's inside the top 80 over that stretch. And he, to me, we talked about him as a guy that could possibly be worth owning. I think he's a must-own guy now. He's playing huge minutes. Obviously, with Winslow out, the minutes are very available. I just think they like his ability to space the floor and efficiency better than they like from Justice Winslow. And I don't know that Robinson's minutes ever fall below that 26-27 territory the rest of the way. So pick him up, see what happens. Great streamer at the very least, and then if things do come off the rails a little bit, then you can pull the plug later on. But certainly good to see Bam Adebayo hit 4 out of 5 free throws. It was actually Jimmy Butler that missed all of his foul shots. And, that put the deal in that one. A blowout in overtime. Very weird. Portland absolutely massacred the New York Knicks. So welcome back to being the Knicks. Just 1.5 games removed from David Fizdale getting fired. The Knicks got smoked. Julius Randle was actually not horrible in this game, almost definitely because I did finally bench him. Mitchell Robinson did not have a block, missed 3 free throws, so that was rough. Marcus Morris had 10 points. Bobby Portis came off the bench for a double-double. Overall, Elfrid Payton was bad. Frank Ntilikina was bad. It's hard on a 4-game night to basically have no one on your team that was a positive player for the evening, and the Knicks tried very hard to make that happen. Basketball Monster, some of their numbers do a nice job of sorting guys into sort of how they performed compared to the other dudes playing on that night. And for the Knicks, again, only 8 teams played, and yet somehow the Knicks didn't have anybody above inside the top 25 of all of the players that played on Tuesday night. Hassan Whiteside was good. Damian Lillard shot the lights out, and that was all they needed. this was a huge blowout, so nobody saw many minutes. Lillard playing under 30 is almost unheard of. CJ McCollum actually played over 30 because he starts the fourth quarter, so he actually gets an okay number of minutes even in a blowout. And some of the guys that we were watching in this game didn't really get what we were hoping they would get. Number one, Kent Bazemore, so he didn't get in for his final chunk of minutes, and he basically was playing. He played 7 minutes in the first quarter. He played about 5.5 in the second quarter. He played 9 minutes, actually, I believe it was, in the third quarter. And I'm assuming he probably would have gotten back in there for another 4 or 5 at the end. And that's all that I'm worried about. I know the stat line wasn't good. The usage is going to be low for him. And I got actually, and I don't know if it was an angry question, a sarcastic one, or a fully genuine one. But the question was about why Kent Bazemore but not Mario Hezonja. And there's a good explanation for this. Stat set. Bazemore doesn't actually need to be an offensive player to have an impact. And it was hard to see from this ball game. Obviously, this is a bad example to use. But the previous one, where he slotted in and played 30-some-odd minutes in Rodney Hood's stead, was probably a better example. If he hits some three-pointers, he will. He'll probably hit 1.5 per game, maybe 2, depending on how these things go and who's taking a ton of shots on a given night. He doesn't need to take that many. 8, 9 shots a game, that's more than enough if he even gets to that point. You know, if he's out there long enough, the fact that he didn't have any assists is actually pretty weird in this one because his teammates were, by all accounts, shooting the ball okay. Not all of them, I guess, just Dame and Whiteside for the most part. Anthony Simons played well in the second quarter, so he saw a few extra minutes there, and then he saw some run in garbage time as well, so don't read too much into that part. And then Bazemore is a steals and blocks maniac. He always has been. So that's why there's a big thing for me there. He's going to see minutes at his at the shooting guard small forward spot. He and CJ McCollum can just alternate who's guarding who. And, I mean, first of all, he's not going to shoot 34% for the entire season from the field either. If his minutes go up, and he's already at 0.9 steals and 0.8 blocks and 1.3 3-pointers in 23 minutes a game, if that goes up into the 27 to 30-minute range, you're talking about a 20 to 30% bump in all of the relevant categories. So 8 points goes to almost 10, 4 rebounds goes to 5, 1.7 assists to 2. You know, you're looking at maybe over a steal and a block a game. That's why I like Bazemore. It's a stat set thing and nothing else. If he's going to see the minutes, nothing's a guarantee in this world, but there's probably enough there to make a nice case for it. So that's why him and not the other guys. But this was obviously an intense blowout of a basketball game. Nobody saw their usual fare, and obviously it's better to be on the good side of a blowout, but the starters were only in there for the first, 85 to 90 points scored anyway, and Dame had 31 of those, so that didn't leave a whole lot for everybody else. So that was your very short Tuesday card. I was excited to see a few things that didn't really pan out. I was excited to see, if New York was going to do anything different. They didn't. I was excited to see what Bazemore's role might be in a competitive basketball game. It wasn't one. But we did learn some stuff on the Huerter front. We learned some stuff on the Duncan Robinson front with Miami. Jamal Murray got hurt, so that was something. We learned a little bit on the Washington side as well. So there were definitely fantasy stories to pull away from this relatively quick Tuesday evening slate. For Wednesday, it is, as per usual, a much fuller NBA card. When I think the word fuller, I think of the kid that peed the bed in Home Alone. 11-game slate on Wednesday. Lakers Magic. Lakers on the road. This should actually be a pretty interesting ballgame. I think that people are going to write off the Magic, and we'll see if the Lakers actually come focused. There's not a whole lot from a fantasy standpoint I'm curious about in this game. Sounds like Avery Bradley's going to play, but that's not fantasy relevant. More than maybe just eliminating any route for Rajon Rondo to have fantasy value. Orlando's pretty easy to predict these days. Clippers are in Toronto. The Kawhi Leonard coming back to Toronto. I'm sure he'll get a huge ovation in this ball game. He actually hasn't won in San Antonio, if I'm not mistaken, since leaving the Spurs. We'll see if there's any little jitters for Kawhi. Toronto side, we're watching Serge Ibaka. Freddie VanVleet's health is the other thing on the radar with that ball club. On the Houston-Cleveland game, we'll watch Ben McLemore, and obviously whoever's seeing the 3-and-D minutes, you can pretty much trust PJ Tucker and Daniel House, but is there enough meat on the bone for McLemore to hold value as Austin Rivers gets healthy, and then whenever the hell we see Eric Gordon down the line, but we don't need to get into that for this ball game. Cleveland's the same old story. They're generally hot garbage. Boston, Indiana, game 2 in the Gordon Hayward return. I assume he'll be good to go for this one for a normal allotment of minutes. Should be an interesting one for Miles Turner. Boston tends to go relatively small outside of the center position. That could make life harder or easier. I don't know, but he's the rim protector, which means a lot of wings and guards are going to be coming at him. This will either be a horrible one or a fantastic one. I don't see anything in between. For Miles, he's still a big buy low for me. Charlotte, Brooklyn, this is the second half back-to-back. We already know what's going on with the Hornets. Brooklyn, pretty good idea with them as well until guys start to get healthy. Garrett Temple, a worthwhile streaming option these days. He's actually been quite solid, hovering around the 90 range pretty much the entire time that Kyrie and Karis LeVert have been out of the lineup. Atlanta on the back-to-back, we'll see what they do with Herter. He might sit this one out, or he might just see depressed minutes. I wouldn't expect the minutes cap to get raised on the second half of a back-to-back, but crazier things have happened. Chicago, they've been playing better, so I'm going to keep giving the nod to Chris Dunn as a starting option. Otto Porter, of course, sort of kind of buried the lead a little bit on that one. It was revealed on Tuesday afternoon that he's going to be reevaluated in another month, and that the bone bruise has actually turned out to be a fracture. I mean, you guys know I love Otto Porter. I am probably the biggest Otto defender in the fantasy landscape, but even this might be too much for me. I think I got to get out of the Otto Porter business. It's probably drop time if somebody interesting pops up. I mean, you're not just going to drop him for the sake of dropping him, but you're looking at least another month, at least mid-January, maybe even later, maybe the All-Star break. And at that point, what's the purpose? So I think I'm moving on. Sad to say that could end up being a sunk draft pick, and that's a real kick in the you-know-what. Utah, Minnesota, we're keeping an eye on Jarrett Culver and Jeff Teague and whatever's going on with that little miniature flip-flop position battle type of thing, but it seems like both could end up above the cut line at some point. Culver needs to fix his percentages. Teague needs to make sure that he knows his proper role in the second unit, and I don't know that he fully comprehends it yet. Mike Conley, I believe, is out, so Joe Ingles' stream time continues. Memphis, with Ja Morant back, looked a hell of a lot better in their last ball game. Brandon Clark actually expected to make his return for this one as well, so that should be a lot more fun on the Grizzlies side. Just sort of take it in, see what it looks like. Aaron Baines, let's see if his minutes come up here. His second game back from the calf injury and what that does to Dario Saric. My guess would be that the more Aaron Baines plays, the more Saric pushes away from the bucket. So that'll be a bad thing for him. And let's keep an eye on Mikal Bridges, who's actually had 2 or 3 decent ball games in a row for Phoenix as well. New Orleans, Milwaukee. Derek Favors is questionable. Alvin Gentry said he expects him to play. Welcome back, man. You got to deal with Giannis and the Bucks. Yikes. Listen, the pragmatist in me says sit him, but the lunatic that needs field goal percent and rebounds says I'm probably going to dump into my lineup. Probably benching Josh Hart and or J.J. Redick for this ball game. It could be a blowout, which might not be a good look for either of them. I think both guys do end up useful in 12-team leagues, but this might not be the game for it. Oklahoma City at Sacramento. Marvin Bagley may make his return for this ball game, so we'll see what that does initially here to Nemanja Bjelica, who's been playing great. I don't expect Rashawn Holmes to take that big of a hit. He's been too damn good. Thunder expect Danilo Gallinari back, which would mean that my prediction that he'd miss at least a week, because he always does with an ankle sprain. I don't know what the hell Gallo's been drinking, but apparently he needed to start drinking it 6 years ago. So they go back to what they always were. And then the Knicks on a back-to-back. I mean, who cares? This is really a toilet bowl of a basketball game, but maybe we'll get a better idea playing a terrible defense. Opportunity to fire up some Knicks. Hopefully this one's more competitive. And for the Warriors, again, another example of a chance to get your stars some decent lines and then sell them off for scrap parts. Folks, as always, please do sign up for the Hoop Ball Brews letter, hoop-ball.com/newsletter. Get yourself on the list. It is free. Thanks for the rate and review. Thanks to Brandon Marcus for talking injury stuff. You guys know the drill. Hit me up if you want to be a contributor here at Hoop Ball as well. Coming up on tomorrow's program, we'll talk to the captain, Mr. Kurt Beach. one of the hosts of our Box Score Breakdown podcast. He is an expert with strategy. We're going to go over sort of time of year strategy, and hopefully this will be a recurring segment going forward as well. Really excited to talk to some of Hoopball's best minds this week on the pod, and I want to do it more often because it's a lot more fun than talking to myself. Brandon is on Twitter at BDMarcus. Hit him up, bug him with questions. He'll love it. I'm at Dan Besbris. Have a wonderful Wednesday. We will talk to you tomorrow, everybody. So long.
This has been a Hoop Ball presentation.